Nyasha stepped onto the dusty road leading to Zawanda, her heart pounding with excitement. She was home. The gods had held her for too long, but now she was free. She imagined the city welcoming her, the people cheering, her parents rushing to embrace her. But as she entered the familiar streets, something felt wrong. The city was alive, but it did not see her. Merchants called out to buyers. Children ran through the narrow pathways. Guards stood at their posts. But no one looked at her. She walked past familiar faces, yet they acted like she wasn't there. She stopped beside a group of servants carrying baskets of fruit. "Excuse me," she said, her voice strong. No one turned. No one blinked. A woman brushed past her, her shoulder, nearly hitting Nyasha's, but she didn't react, as if Nyasha was just another gust of wind. Her chest tightened. This was not possible. She was their princess. Heart racing, she made her way to the palace. The golden gate stood tall, just as she remembered. Relief flooded her. Her father would fix this. Her mother would know what to do. But as she stepped forward, 2 guards moved, crossing their spears in front of her. "State your business, stranger." Nyasha blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. "Stranger?" Her fingers curled into fists. "I am Princess Nyasha. Let me through." The guards did not move. One of them frowned, studying her as if she were mad. "Princess Nyasha? The royal family has no daughter by that name." Her breath hitched. What was happening? The gates did not open for her, and her nightmare had only begun. Nyasha's hands trembled as she stepped through the palace gates. The guards had refused to recognize her, but she would not be stopped. This was her home. She would get answers, no matter what. Her footsteps echoed through the grand halls, just as they had when she was a child. Chandeliers hung high, their golden light illuminating the marble floors. Everything looked the same, yet something felt disturbingly wrong. Servants moved around her, but none acknowledged her presence. She stormed toward the throne room. Doors loomed ahead, tall and heavy, yet slightly open, as if waiting for her. She pushed them wide, her breath catching as she stepped inside. At the far end of the grand hall, 2 figures sat upon golden thrones. Her parents. Mother. Father. Her voice was raw, filled with desperate relief. "It's me, Nyasha." King Tembo's cold gaze locked onto her. Queen Zala's fingers gripped the armrest of her throne, her knuckles white. There was no joy, no warmth, no recognition. "Who are you?" Her father's deep voice cut through the silence. Nyasha's stomach twisted. "What?" She took a shaky step forward. "It's me, your daughter, your Nyasha." Her mother flinched, her face pale, her body stiff, as if she had seen a ghost. Nyasha's heartbeat roared in her ears. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke. But then she saw movement. To the side of the thrones, sitting gracefully in a chair draped in silk, was a woman. Nyasha's breath hitched. She was young, perfect, beautiful. Her smooth skin glowed under the golden light. Her features were striking, familiar yet flawless. She was everything Nyasha had once been, but more. Her father gestured toward the young woman, his expression soft, proud. "Meet our daughter, Princess Zalika." Nyasha's entire world shattered. She staggered back, shaking her head. "No, I am your daughter." King Tembo did not move. His face remained cold, unbothered. "You are mistaken," he said. "Zalika is our only child." The words crushed her. Her mother did not speak. Her father's gaze did not waver. It was as if she had never existed. She turned to the girl, the stranger wearing her crown, her life, and Zalika, She only smiled. Nyasha's legs felt weak. Her entire body ached. Her mother, the woman who had once kissed her forehead and held her through storms, would not even meet her eyes. This was a nightmare, a lie. Nyasha clenched her fists. Nyasha's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't breathe. The world around her was spinning, collapsing. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She turned to her father, her hands shaking. "How could you forget me?" She whispered, her voice barely holding together. Her father did not move. He did not soften. He only repeated the same cruel words. "You are mistaken. Zalika is our only daughter." Nyasha's blood ran cold. She looked to her mother, silently begging her to see reason, to break this madness. But her mother's lips remained pressed into a thin, unmoving line. No tears, no grief, no hesitation. The people in the court murmured softly among themselves, not about her, but about Zalika. Their voices carried admiration, love, devotion. "She is the most graceful queen we have ever had. Zalika is wise beyond her years. She saved us from ruin." Nyasha clenched her fists. Saved them? From what? She had been the one raised to rule. This was her kingdom, her people. And now they spoke of Zalika as though she had always been here. Her skin burned with rage. "I don't know what lies you've all been fed," she said, stepping forward, her voice sharper now. "But I am Nyasha, the firstborn of Ziwanda. You cannot erase me." Zalika tilted her head slightly, the perfect image of calm and control. "You speak as though you were ever meant to last," she said smoothly. Before Nyasha could speak, the doors opened once more. A shadow moved through the grand entrance, footsteps slow, deliberate, familiar. Nyasha's breath caught. Jengo. Her lips parted as she turned to him, expecting, hoping, for some sign of recognition. But he didn't even look at her. He walked past her as if she were invisible. Nyasha watched in horror as he strode straight toward Zalika. And then, before the entire court, he took Zalika's hand and kissed her. The world fell silent. Nyasha's body turned ice cold. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. No. No. This wasn't happening. She stared at Jengo, her Jengo, the man who had once challenged her, tested her, burned for her, the man who had belonged to her. But his eyes, when he finally looked at her, held nothing. No longing, no recognition, nothing at all. He was hers, but not anymore. Nyasha felt something inside her crack. And then, Jengo leaned close to her, ear, and whispered, "This is your punishment for being arrogant." Nyasha couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The words echoed in her skull, pounding like war drums. Punishment? She turned to face him, eyes wide with disbelief. This couldn't be real. Jengo had loved her, wanted her, burned for her. And now he stood beside Zalika, looking at her like she was nothing. Nyasha's fingers trembled, curling into fists. "Jengo!" Her voice cracked. "This isn't you." His dark eyes met hers. For the first time since he had entered the room, he truly looked at her. And he smirked, not with warmth, not with familiarity, but with pity. Nyasha's stomach twisted. "The gods never erased you," Jengo said, his voice smooth, merciless. "They replaced you." Nyasha staggered back. The court around her blurred. The walls felt too tall, the ceiling too far away. Replaced, not erased, not forgotten. Replaced. And now, she stood in front of the woman who had taken everything. Her family, her title, her love. Zalika smiled. Did you really think you were special? Nyasha's breathing grew heavy. The gods had played her for a fool. They hadn't destroyed her existence. They had perfected it. She turned to her parents, hoping, begging, for a flicker of doubt in their eyes. There was none. Servant poured golden wine into her father's goblet. King Tembo lifted it high, his deep voice carrying across the hall. To Zalika, my daughter, the light of Zawanda, the one who saved us all. The court erupted into cheers, laughter, clinking goblets. Nyasha flinched. Saved them? From what? The people adored Zalika. They worshipped her. She was elegant, effortless, smiling at the court with perfect grace. And when she turned to Jengo, her eyes held the kind of devotion Nyasha had once dreamed of. Jengo responded in kind. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. His grip was firm, secure, loving. Nyasha's throat tightened. Jengo had once looked at her that way. She had once been the one standing beside him. She had once been the one the kingdom adored. Now she was nothing. Nyasha swallowed hard. She couldn't take it. She pushed herself up from the chair, her legs weak beneath her. She needed air. She needed to escape. As she turned, Zalika's voice stopped her cold. You're still here. Nyasha's pulse spiked. Slowly she turned back, her jaw clenched. Zalika stood in the center of the room, eyes locked on her. The court grew silent. Zalika smiled, sweet and sharp. You should leave, sister. There is no place for you here. The words cut deeper than a blade. Nyasha felt her body tremble, and for the first time in her life, she had nowhere to go. Nyasha stumbled through the dark corridors, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had to know the truth. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just her family forgetting her. This was something worse. Her hands slid against the stone walls as she moved, her fingers trembling. Then she saw it, a small, narrow door, one that had never been there before. Or maybe it had, and she had simply never been meant to see it. She pushed it open. Inside, a dim torch flickered against the walls, casting shadows over a small chamber. It smelled of dust, of time, of secrets. Scrolls and letters lay scattered across the wooden table, their edges yellowed, their ink smudged. Her fingers trembled as she picked one up. She read the words once, then twice, and then she stopped breathing. The gods have spoken. The sacrifice must be made. Nyasha's blood ran cold. She grabbed another parchment, her eyes scanning the words in frantic desperation. A stronger heir, a better queen, a daughter worthy of Zawanda. Her hands clenched around the paper. Another scroll, another truth. She will not remember. No one will. It is as if she never was. Her stomach twisted. Her father's signature was at the bottom. She staggered back, her heart hammering. Her own family had given her away. They had made a deal with the gods to replace her. Nyasha's breath came fast, sharp. Her legs felt weak, her body trembling. Zalika was not her sister. She was a creation, a goddess-made queen. And Nyasha? She had been nothing more than a mistake. She gripped the scrolls, her chest heaving. Her father had chosen to erase her. And now, there was only one thing left to do. Nyasha's footsteps thundered against the palace floor as she stormed toward the throne room. Her body burned with rage. They had done this to her. Her own family. Her father had traded her. Her mother had let it happen. She had been cast aside, forgotten, erased. And now, she knew the truth. She was never meant to return. The grand doors swung open as she shoved them apart. Gasps echoed through the court. Nyasha's breath came hard and fast. "Tell them!" she shouted, her voice raw. "Tell them what you did." the court murmured. Her father's face remained cold, unmoving. Zalika only smiled. You were never meant to return. The words struck like a blade to the chest. The room erupted. People chanted Zalika's name, cheering, praising their beloved princess. The world tilted. Nyasha was the villain here. She staggered back. What did I do to deserve this? Her voice cracked. She searched the room, searching for something, anything, that could ground her. Then her mother spoke. Her voice was calm, cold, final. Zalika is the daughter we always wanted. You were the mistake. Nyasha's vision went black. Her legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor. The voices faded. The golden walls blurred. The weight of betrayal pressed down on her. And in that moment, she truly was nothing. What would you do if your own family replaced you? Would you fight for your place, or let the gods erase you forever? Comment below. Should Nyasha accept her, fate, or burn the kingdom to the ground? Like this video, if you're ready for the next part. Subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Next episode. Nyasha knows the truth now. But what will she do with it? The gods stole her life, her love, her place in history. Now she has two choices: bow, or make the gods regret ever creating Zalika.